Just as it was not God's plan for me to suffer at the hands of a man, it was not God's plan for me to end up in the ICU fighting for my life. It was not God who caused me to have the asthma attack that separated my spirit from my body at the age of 12, but it was God who I met face to face that night in the middle of that mess. I'd never heard of any out-of-body experiences or spoken to anyone who could describe heaven to me. The only people I knew at 12 years old who had been to heaven had become permanent residents, and they never called home. It would be decades later until I found out that there are others with experiences like mine. The years of suppressing my emotions to hide the pain of trauma had chipped away at the childlike faith inside of me. Trauma does that. Lie after lie that become embedded in a person's soul eventually cause the heart to harden and become dull, spiritually insensitive. So by the time I was 12, I didn't know if God was still there or if he still cared. And if he was and did then, why didn't he make Grandpa stop? I had bought the lie too. God was God, all-powerful, but the one lie that constantly whispered in my ear, "How can God love you since he let all these bad things happen?" had been germinating in my heart. I didn't know it then, but I needed more than the powerful God Almighty. I needed God, the good Father. Laying there in the hospital bed, as some level of conscious thought returned, I realized that I was not dead. Based on the hustle and bustle of activity around me, that was obviously more than the doctors knew. I tried to move or speak to let them know I could hear them, but my limbs would not cooperate. Despite my most focused attempt to open my eyes or twitch a finger, there was nothing I could do to communicate. They looked upon my body and saw the outward shell without hearing my silent screams. At some point, a doctor peeled back one of my eyelids to shine a flashlight into my eye. I was looking back at him, but it was like he couldn't see me. Irritated, he mumbled his discontentment under his breath. Incompetent, wet behind the ears doctors, and something about disturbing him at home in the middle of his dinner party. As he looked into my eyes, I saw sadness in his. He flicked between my pupils with his flashlight and drew his silent conclusion. He had nothing more to offer me. He was as lost as I was, painfully aware of the fragility of life, my life, as it slipped away in front of him. I retreated inside of my body like a turtle curling up inside its shell, wondering how this weird experience was going to end, and if I would be trapped like a prisoner inside my own body forever. A panic began to swell like a wave within me. If no one can hear me screaming, how will this end? Will I be zipped up in a body bag and buried in the ground or shoved in an oven to be burned to ashes? I began concentrating on calming myself down. This is no time to panic, Carly. It's not going to help, I told myself as convincingly as I could. Relaxation crept over my soul, a welcome relief. God, where are you? I needed to know now more than ever. And then it happened. I started floating up through my body, which was still tied to the hospital bed with IV tubes and various monitors all alarming at once. I saw the doctor pressing the mask over my nose and mouth, felt his little finger pressing under my chin to secure the seal of the mask to my face. Rhythmically squeezing the bag trying to get me to breathe, thumping my chest so hard, my body bounced on the rigid bed with such vigor that I was sure my ribs would crack, shouting at each other, ripping open syringe packets to pump drugs into my veins and scurrying about. Suddenly, every cell in my body was at peace, except now I had two bodies. One was in the bed and the other was me, the real me. Very aware that the real me was not the one who was lying on the bed, I tried to reconcile how I was moving. I was walking, I think, but not consciously. Floating may be a more accurate description. Turning away from the hospital bed, on my right was a set of white double doors that shone with light through their frosted glass windows. I found myself moving toward them and then through them as they swung open to the long hallway on the other side. Passing through the door and down the hall, the light became brighter. It reminded me of the warmth that penetrates your body when you lie in the sun on a hot summer day. It was so inviting, so overwhelmingly peaceful and loving. I was captivated by it, drawn toward the light by a love that words cannot adequately describe. As I continued down the hallway, I found myself pulled to the side. There was some kind of scaffolding, which I thought was odd. I mean, surely there is not going to be construction in heaven, right? As I looked more closely, I saw that the scaffolding covered a gate. It was my gate. Suddenly aware that I was not alone, I turned around to face the presence behind me. The light shone so brightly that I couldn't look at his face, only down at his feet. They were big feet, feet that had walked many miles. They were beautiful feet. The figure in front of me was so close that his white robes brushed against my knees and I felt his warm breath on my head, flooding every cell in my body and making my toes tingle. The memories of the day had melted away to the point I was not even conscious of them. I was completely captivated in the moment. My flesh was entirely at peace in the presence of this stranger who was towering over me. If I had been back in my earthly body, I would have been afraid, intimidated, and looking for an exit to get away from his gaze. Yet, somehow, I felt like I knew this person, like I had always known him. I knew things without him using words, without either of us speaking. Words are inadequate to describe the depth of love and peace I experienced while in his presence. I wanted to stay in that moment forever. My knees began to wobble under my robe. I wasn't wearing the hospital gown anymore. I had on a white robe. I could see my legs waver as all of my muscles relaxed. But just before the point at which I thought I might melt onto the floor, a finger touched my chin. He lifted my face until our gazes met. The brightness that shone from his skin was so intense that it was difficult to make out his facial features without squinting. I didn't know his name, but I knew who he was, and I knew he knew me. Like, really knew me. He knew everything about me, he always had. He had always been there, right beside me, holding my heart in the palm of his hand. Now I saw it. My tender heart at 4 years old was all the while being protected from the evils of this world by my Creator, my Father. Like asteroids hitting the outer atmosphere of the Earth and burning up was every physical and emotional violation, every weapon sent to crush me. Though they tried with great force, they could never penetrate those hands to loosen his grip on me. I was his, and I wanted to stay with him forever. But my visit was premature, and I knew I had to go back to my earthly life. No sooner had that thought entered my mind than it was gone. When you abide under the shadow of Shaddai, you are hidden in the strength of God Most High. He's the hope that holds me and the stronghold to shelter me, the only God for me, and my great confidence. He will rescue you from every hidden trap of the enemy, and he will protect you from false accusation and any deadly curse. His massive arms are wrapped around you, protecting you. You can run under his covering of majesty and hide. His arms of faithfulness are a shield keeping you from harm. Do you like this type of content? Please let us know in the comments. God bless.